Trust. How big of a word is that? That's a pretty big word when we think about our government, when we think about America and freedom. Trust. Well, there's 3 reasons we need to look into trust and look at maybe some manipulations of trust and who we can trust. What does that do for our freedoms? What does that do for our people? What do we do as Americans if we can't trust? What are 3 avenues of worry that we should have when it comes to trusting people and entities that are around us? Let's jump into a good video about trust today and how 3 reasons we need to look at problems of trust, but also maybe some reasons to have some solutions there. We need to gain wisdom from maybe things that we see that's going on around us. Today's video is going to be a good one, guys, and it starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. It's a cold morning here, actually standing by the milk barn because it's actually the closest building to the house. So I'm actually freezing. So I'm gonna do this video and then I'm going inside. I'm telling you, I cannot stand cold weather, especially when it comes to spring. I've got blooms on the plums and blueberries and this is not good for them. So it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about that. So guys, thank you so much for being here. And if you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or down, but let us know what you think about this video. So when I think about, trust and think about where we're at with our freedoms, it kind of scares me a little bit because I don't believe we even know what truth is anymore in a moral compass sense. And in America now, I don't know who to trust. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is media. We have a lot of media manipulation, and because media is so influenced by maybe some oligarchs or maybe by just a few big players, do they really have our best interests at heart? Now, this goes on both sides. I believe there's big business in left-leaning, and I think there's big business in right-leaning. So then it comes back to people. It comes back to uncensored and unfiltered documents and gaining wisdom and discernment from people. From me, from individuals like me. You don't have to actually believe what I say, but what I hope you do is you'll go back and research some of the things that we talk about, such as Twitter. If you like Twitter, get on Twitter. Now, Twitter, I don't believe you need to spend all your time on social media, but there's things that you can find in smaller investigative style journalists and news sources that could give you some great insight on some things that are going on in your life or things that you're worried about that you may not get from legacy media. So when we find that legacy media is telling us one thing, we need to have discernment and wisdom to seek, well, is that the truth? What spin are they having it? What's their sources? So trust is a big deal. Now here's the other thing. When we can't trust the source or when we can't trust the media, that makes the responsibility fall back on you. Great quote from Benjamin Franklin says, "Make yourself sheep and the wolves will eat you." Here's where I mean. My sheep get out all the time. My sheep are right over there on the pond dam right now. I love my sheep. They're beautiful, but they're pretty ignorant. If for instance, one jumps the net, every one of them feels like they've got to jump the net. And it's notoriously going to happen that one will get caught in the net. Well, guess what? They need me to either save them or just say, you know what, I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to let them free range. Well, the thing about free ranging sheep is they tend to not know the dangers. And when they see dangers, sometimes they run to danger instead of running away. So we tend to want to keep them close to us and in proximity in these electrified nets. And here they are jumping out of the net that could save their life. Well, us as humans can sometimes do the same thing. When we don't gain good wisdom and knowledge on what a source or what a situation may be, then we're just led astray and we jump out of the safety nets that we're in and right into the wolf's hands. And when we don't understand maybe wisdom in a situation, we'll believe anything. So what I think we've seen with our moral compass and what we've seen with America is because we've been so censored and because we just trust whatever news sources tell us, then we tend to lose out on what real truth is. And when we don't know what real truth is, we're the sheep jumping out of the net. It's a big deal. So the first point is sometimes you can't trust the media. And when you are watching media and when you are doing stories, find out what the truth is, have wisdom and discernment to get to the bottom of it. Who's the source? What are they funded by? Who's over the media? And can we learn something from it, and can we gain better wisdom from diving a little bit deeper into it? We need to find freedom back into what we hear and what we see, and maybe finding truth. And censorship's a big part of that. A quote from George Washington says, "If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." Isn't it funny how both Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, in the quotes dealing with leadership and learning, they both talked about sheep and being led astray, either to slaughter or to wolves. So I don't know if point one's not to be a sheep, but honestly what it is to gain wisdom and then find discernment in wisdom, so that way we know what truth is and don't be just led astray. Well, another biggie, unlike trusting media, is can we trust our government? Can we trust our politicians? Now here's the kicker. When it comes to politicians and government, and it even happens from the local to the regional to the state and to the national. And I would challenge you, you can do a lot more locally than you can nationally. It doesn't get the accolades. And the thing about fighting for some of the rights locally, it will affect you more. Now, the problems with politicians and government start really locally and go all the way up to nationally. So we can't miss what's going on around us, and you can't miss what's going on nationally. When I think of politicians, and I think of people who want to be in government, two things I always think about is, why do you want to do that? Because I don't believe you can hardly trust any politician. And if you are going to run, are you doing it because you really want to do something better for America, or are you doing it to be a career politician? Career politicians, I believe, are all crooked. I'm sorry, if you're a career politician, you're crooked. You've been bought out and you've been sold because you're not doing anything to help our nation other than fattening your own pocket. So that's not what we need when it comes to freedom and liberty. And I don't know if I could trust you. No offense to Republicans or Democrats, but we have a lot of career politicians that have made millions off our systems and off lobbying, and really hadn't done jack for the states or the people they represent. Another wise quote by Benjamin Franklin says, "Sell not virtue to purchase wealth, nor liberty to purchase power." I believe we have been completely sold out by our own government and by our own politicians, in the name of maybe not hurting America, but that they're looking out for themselves. Well, if they're looking out for themselves, then ultimately they're going to hurt most other Americans. Just like this week, we saw big bailouts of banks that were over the limits of FDIC. What's amazing, we have policies, we have regulations, we have laws, and then we can change them and bend them and break them and mold them based on who is the one that got hurt. So I think the same thing with corrupt politicians. We see all the time, and here we are fixing to arrest the past president. It's already come out that they were going to indict the last president. However, we know there's crime going on with the current presidency. There's been crime with several other politicians. This is what I mean. I go back to the media situation, then I go back to politicians. How can we trust a system that changes? How can we trust a system that, well, if my bank shuts down in local Southwest Mississippi, are they going to care to bail out everybody? No, they're going to probably do the FDIC limit. However, they bailed out all these other banks that were tied to some of the regulatory bodies of politicians and big business. That is something we can't trust. Now, politicians are very good to go on Twitter, and politicians are very good to go on media and say they're going to do something about it. And guess what? They never do. And I think what they do is they play the game. They play within the 40s. Nobody tries to get a touchdown. We just try to play a little on the conservative side, a little on the liberal side. And ultimately, we're the ones, as Americans, getting left out. And these guys are just fattening their pockets. So we have to find trust back in our leadership and find trust back in our government. It's sadly the ones that are running for office tend to not be the good guys anymore, because I think all the good guys are terrified of saying, you know what, I don't want to ruin my life. I don't want to ruin my business. I don't want to ruin my family, because that tends to happen. So then it comes back to, who can we trust when it comes to leadership and government? It's not the career politicians. When they come out and tell you during election time that they're going to do something for you, it's hogwash. They're not going to do anything for you. So again, it goes back to not being the sheep. We have to look for truth, find the people who say, you know what, this is not my job. I'm not a career politician. I'm going to serve, and then I'm done. When they talk about term limits, when they talk about not making lobbying money, when they talk about truly looking out for somebody, and they have a proven record of doing that on the local levels, they'll do it on the national levels. That's the ones you want, the ones who have backbone, the ones you can trust, not these career politicians. Another quote from George Washington. I know you may get tired of these quotes, but the whole point of these quotes is to realize wisdom was really sought after when we were looking for liberty and freedom. Our founding fathers, no matter how much spin they get today, they may not have been perfect, but they really did try to set up a good nation. So George Washington had another good quote, and I thought was huge. It says, "A few men have virtue to withstand the highest bidder." It is hard to find a politician or someone that is setting policy that doesn't have bias and that doesn't have a price. That's hard to find. And then another great quote that kind of goes along with that from George Washington once more. "It is impossible to rightly govern a nation without God and without a Bible." Now, does that mean everybody's perfect? No, we're not gonna be. But I think if we try to lean on our own understanding, we're not gonna ever succeed. And that goes back to electing politicians. If those politicians are looking for what they can do, they're not going to do anything. They're finite just like us, and they're going to fail you. But when we look back to Christ and look back to God, our nation was set up on things like Judeo-Christian values and the Bible and God, and it was. No matter what historical document you try to find to smear that, it's truth. It was set up on godly principles. If we fall back on that, I believe we'd find that there are good godly men that still want to lead this country. There are good media sources that still want to find truth. We have to find the people who see the best interest at heart and have a godly perspective on things instead of maybe their own interest. Number 1 and 2, media. Number 2, politicians and government. It's hard to trust them, but we have to find discernment and wisdom. Now, number 3. I had to change positions because actually due to that global warming, it's like 20 something here in the deep south in March, which is absolutely crazy. So my camera started glitching, so we had to change scenery a little bit. But on to point 3. Number 3 is, can we trust ourselves? Now that is a big statement, and I've been telling you to have discernment, have wisdom when it comes to number 1 and 2. But what do I mean when I say, can we trust ourselves? One of those other good points by Benjamin Franklin, it says, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Now we've heard that statement probably from your teacher, maybe from your parents. That's something that we've heard before. But the kicker is this, can we say that we want to take over our food system? Can we say that we want to, purchase firearms and have self-defense classes, learn how to take care of ourselves, learn how to garden, learn how to stockpile? If we can learn to do those things, then we can trust, when things go bad, we can lean back on ourselves on some of those items. But if we constantly are manipulated by number 1 and 2, then number 3 is for naught, because then we can't trust ourselves because we believe that they're telling us the truth. We believe whatever they're feeding us. Look at our education system. I mean, it's broke, but it's because we're being led wrong there, and therefore we're losing some of our generations because we're not teaching them anything. We're indoctrinating them. Look at our religion. We've taken religion out of everything and Christ out of everything. When we do that as a society, we were told that it would be better. We need freedom from it. Well, now look at us. We are morally falling down as a nation, and we have no values. We don't know which way is up. We don't know what's right and what's wrong. We're letting criminals on the streets. So I go back and say, can we trust ourselves? Because if we cannot trust ourselves, then we're being fed by 1 and 2 instead of having wisdom and discernment. We're actually saying to ourselves, well, everybody has a better thought pattern than what we do. And since they're telling us that it's all going to be okay, our money's safe, then we're not going to prepare. We're not going to buy precious metals. We're not going to stockpile because people say food's always going to be available. Don't listen to those conspiracy theorists. Don't listen to those preppers. They don't know what they're talking about. So number 3 is we have to look past all the trash in number 1 and 2, find wisdom and discernment, and say, you know what? Instead of, going out to eat this week, let's try to buy a little extra food. Instead of going out this week, let's do this. Or let's don't put all our money in the bank this week. Let's put some at our home, just in case, just for rainy day. So then not only are we looking past some media issues, not only are we looking past some politicians' issues, now we've got to look past our own foolishness, because we are foolish. We tend to be sheep, like we were talking about in the first 2 points. So when we tend to think that we know it all, we end up falling and failing, and we don't know it all. Now, let's go a little bit deeper in solutions here. Number 1, 2, and 3 cannot be fixed really by just us and by our wisdom and discernment on our own. Goes back to the point with George Washington. A nation that does not have any morals and values and does not have God and Bible as center of it, then we will falter, and then you're going to get to the point where you can't trust anybody. So with our point, we can't trust who's telling us the news. We can't trust who's leading us politically. We can't even trust ourselves. But when we learn to lean back on Christ and learn to lean back on the Word of God and learn to lean back on the values and the morals that we once had as a nation, I truly believe we would find peace, we would find more wisdom, more discernment, and we wouldn't lose the freedoms and liberties, and then trust would be a word that meant something again. People throw that term out all the time. You can trust us. I can trust myself. This is a good decision. This is good. The media knows what they're talking about. All the while, it's just a bunch of sheep leading sheep and a bunch of fools leading fools. But more importantly, the solution really comes back to God, the Bible, the Word, and understanding that our finite minds are foolish and we're sheep. When we learn to trust back on Christ and the foundation of our country, all this other stuff would work out. Trust would be something important again. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Let us know what you think. Am I wrong? Am I right? Can we trust the government? Can we trust media? Can we trust politicians? Can we trust ourselves sometimes when we don't have all the information that we're needing? Sometimes we have to go back to the source. We have to find guidance in Christ and God and the Bible. Remember, that's what our country was set up on. No matter if you believe it or not, it is historical truth that has happened. Do your research. Remember, don't listen to me. Don't trust me. Go back, do the research for yourself, and then you're going to see there's a lot more to this morals and values and having a godly perspective on things. Then we could develop trust once more. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.